Hello and welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and if you're new to this channel, thanks for checking it out. In the last episode, I talked about a recent UFO conference I attended called Contact in the Desert 2024, and I'm starting to timestamp my episodes, so you'll find all of that information in the description box below, along with all the links and other places where you can follow me and follow other interesting people who I'm learning from. And while you're poking around down there, you could also give these videos a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel, it doesn't cost anything. And if you want to share it with a friend, that would be greatly appreciated. I would also love it if more people would comment. It's really fun when I get comments and get to just hear any little tidbit of like what you thought about it, or if it sparked something in your mind about an experience that you've had. I just really appreciate that, and it's super fun when that happens. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to do the About This Channel section. So now that you have timestamps, you can like skip through these things if you're watching these episodes consistently. But on this channel, for those who are new, I'm exploring anomalous phenomena of all kinds with a special focus on UFO history, aliens, and psychic phenomena, sometimes known as psi phenomena. I'm also exploring all things consciousness, and that is through many different lenses, but a lot of times I like to look at things through the lens of Tom Campbell's theory of everything, which I'll be doing today. And I'm curating this channel based on my own curiosity. So I'm following my curiosity, but I'm also keeping it pretty tight. I'm not looking into everything and just talking about everything anomalous and everything alien. I'm actually following what feels most compelling to me, makes the most sense. I'm looking at the research of people who I believe are credible and deserve to be listened to, and I'm just trying to kind of bring all of that into one place. So this is Shakti's view of the UFO topic and all the tangential topics that relate to consciousness and science and psychic stuff, I guess. This is the psychic season, so we're kind of zooming in on the consciousness side of everything. Season 1 is all about UFO history. So I've been studying the intersection of UFO phenomena, abduction, contact, and experience, remote viewing, and spirituality in my free time for over a decade now. And I also grew up in an alternative community, which was a yoga ashram. So I was meditating, I was meditating and contemplating really big esoteric concepts from a very early age, and was kind of just deeply ingrained into my personal understanding of reality. So I've been thinking about this stuff forever. It's personal, it's universal, it's interesting, it's cool, it's weird, and it's finding its way into the mainstream conversation little by little as we all become more interested in things like the nature of reality. There's also a lot of stuff going on in US politics, in our own Congress when it comes to UAP transparency. There's a lot of talk of reverse engineering programs, of alien technology, and one of the things that people don't really like to talk about in the mainstream is who are the beings or intelligences that are behind all of this. So on this channel, we're going to look at all of that, and that's what we've been doing. And by we, I mean you and me. Not me, myself, and I. And my assistant, my little dog. So I'm reading a bunch of books. I'm reading a bunch of articles. I'm going to conferences. I'm having conversations with people that I meet. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, and I'm taking copious notes on everything. And I'm really trying to pull out the threads and make sense of this whole tangled web of stuff and information, which is very sticky and it's very easy to get lost in all of it. But I really love the process. So if you're into all that kind of stuff, you're really going to like this channel, I think, and I hope that you do. And, you know, this channel is chronological, so I'm trying to build a nice, well-rounded understanding that goes from a kind of a more practical and easy to grasp side of things, which is the history of UFO sightings, into the more esoteric and weird side of things. So if you're interested in this topic, please check out my playlists and go back to the beginning of my episodes and start watching it from there, because you might kind of have a different mindset by the time you get through all of those and come back to the psychic season than you would if you just jump in now. But do whatever you want. It's all there for you. I'm trying to make it easier to just jump around and skip what you don't want to hear and go to what you do want to hear by adding these timestamps. So I hope that that's helpful. One day, I hope I can branch out into like interviewing people. I think that would be really cool, like so many other podcasters. But for now, I'm just doing my own little kind of book report style gathering of information, sharing my thoughts and reflections, and mostly trying to share other people's theories and research with you. So we're in the psychic season, and today I want to talk about why the topic of telepathy and other psi phenomena relate to the mysteries surrounding aliens and UFOs. So let's get into it. Of course, like I mentioned before, I'm always looking at things through the lens of Tom Campbell's theory of everything. So let's go ahead and frame up this conversation with a little high-level look at his theory. And for more on consciousness, you can go to my little World of Thoughts 3-episode series, which is episode 15, 16, and 17. I've linked those below. You could also read Tom Campbell's book, which, I mean, I would love it if you did. I think it would be so fun if more people read this and we could all discuss it, but it is like 800 or 900 pages. And if you don't have time for that today, I'm going to let you know everything you need to know for this conversation. So Tom's theory states that our reality is like a simulation, and this is not literal, not a computer built by someone where we are all Sims. He does not think that we're in a deterministic reality where we have no free will. We do have free will. That free will is sometimes limited by the rule set or by the set of choices that we are faced with in any given moment. As we all know, we're not just like limitless in this reality where we can do anything all the time. But we do have the ability to make choices, and that's a very powerful ability. And through the process of selecting the optimal choice from whatever set of choices is in front of us at any given time, we can progress on a really fun and exciting life path that opens up and expands our choices. Of course, there are always going to be different situations for different people because life is full of chaos and randomness. So we're all dealing with, the status quo, whatever's going on around us, and the time that we live in, and just all the conditions and all the factors are contributing to the narrowness of our choice set at any given moment. But there's still a lot of freedom within all of that, and that's what's kind of exciting about being a human and being alive, I think. And, he's not one of those future humans people. He's not saying we're in an alien simulation, nothing like that. But his theory states that this is a consciousness system where consciousness is the computer. Consciousness is also the player. So we, kind of like the players of this game of life, are units of consciousness, and we're playing within a system that is also consciousness. So consciousness is everywhere, in everything. That's kind of one of the major foundational thoughts behind his theory. And everything is or has or is made of or is a part of consciousness. So there's more, according to My Big Toe, which is his book title, Toe being Theory of Everything. We're here to learn and grow. We're not just here to do nothing. We actually do have a purpose, according to his theory, which is kind of the spiritual side of it all. And I like that. It's to reduce entropy, to evolve towards love. That kind of means, moving towards greater cooperation, collaboration, harmony, those kinds of things. And his work it's the perspective of a physicist who studied consciousness through direct experience. So he worked with Bob Monroe at the Monroe Institute for 30 years doing science around what people call out-of-body experiences. And through having his own experiences, he was able to take his physics mind and background and combine it with his own personal experience and spiritual awareness that grew from that personal experience, and this is how he formed his theory of everything. And his theory is not too different from many other theories, but every time someone does this work and comes up with their own way of describing the nature of reality, what they're doing is they're putting new language to things that are experienceable, but that there is some variation in those experiences for many people. So a lot of mystics and spiritual people come back from their own experiences with terminology for what they went through, and then people build up religions around it. And this is a way of stripping away the language that carries all the heavy connotations that come with religious language and providing us with some new ways of conceptualizing these really hard to grasp things like experiences and consciousness. So that's Tom Campbell, and we're going to be talking about him a lot, as always. He has this term, the LCS, which refers to the larger consciousness system, and that's kind of like the whole shebang of reality soup. It's the whole reality. It's all of existence, you could say, as far as I understand, the LCS. And within that LCS, we have these various reality frames. And I kind of think of these as like these eggs that are nesting like a Russian doll. So layers within layers within layers. But the closer we look, we start to see that these egg shells are more permeable than we thought. The borders between reality frames maybe are more like suggestions and less like a crunchy wall. And maybe some of these borders have holes in them. And maybe some are melting and dissolving, causing overlaps in reality frames. But how can we measure what is outside of the physical world, which is where measurements happen? Well, that's what a lot of consciousness studies are about, and new scientific methods are needed, but experiential data seems to be a very important piece of this puzzle of figuring it all out. So all the people that are studying this stuff talk a lot about how you have to have your own experience of consciousness phenomena to begin to understand it. And so I'm pursuing that constantly with meditation and out-of-body practices and techniques and remote viewing techniques and tracking my dreams and writing down all of my anomalous experiences, because I'm just trying to develop my own unique and personal understanding like all of these people who have come before. This stuff is also really exciting in terms of the value of the accounts that come from experiencers of anomalous phenomena. So gathering and analyzing this data will become increasingly more important as we progress in our understanding of the UFO and alien phenomena. But back to Tom Campbell for a minute, let's talk about our physical matter reality. Wow, there's a storm coming and I'm like, am I going to lose power again? We'll see what happens. The alien is battery operated, so that won't go off. I'm sorry, my phone is jiggling a little bit too. I think the wind is blowing it. Well, let's see how this goes. So, PMR, physical matter reality. That's the reality frame that we're currently experiencing in as humans on Earth. And this reality is bound by a rule set. The rule set is basically physics. You know, it's the nature of physical reality. And time, because we are in a time-bound reality. And the way that I've heard it described that makes the most sense to me is that we live in a world where change is constant. We know that everything is about change here. And in order for change to occur, time has to be a fundamental component. So change is something going from point A to point B over time. That's how it works in this reality, you know, for the most part, as far as we can tell. So those are kind of like the things that are confining us, but consciousness is not confined to that rule set. Consciousness goes beyond it. And come here, Jet. Come here. My dog is scared of the storm. Okay. So consciousness is free to go outside of those confines and those rule sets, and that's what's kind of interesting about this idea of contacting or communicating with beings that may or may not be existing within our current reality frame. So we're going to break that down a little more later on too. But right now, let's talk about dreams. So other reality frames that humans experience are dream realms and what some people call astral realms, or the places we go as consciousness outside of PMR, physical matter reality. And active imagination could be considered a consciousness frame according to some. Tom has used the example of reading a book. So this is a form of consciousness projection into an imaginal realm. So you're both in your body and wandering through Mordor or Fantasia or Narnia. You're kind of in your body, but you're kind of there. And sometimes you forget that you're in your body and you're almost all the way there. And for certain types of people with really strong imaginations, they do become completely immersed in books and in their own thoughts, almost as real. There's actually a really cool Radiolab episode about this. I think it's called aphantasia, and that is spelled like A-P-H-A, aphantasia. And you should check that out because it was so interesting. This one person who had a really extremely powerful imagination got to the point where their internal projections were coming out in the sense that they could project onto physical objects, and they could not distinguish between real and unreal in the physical world. So they gave the example of like this person was flipping a coin and they were thinking to themselves, okay, I want it to turn to heads, and the coin turned to heads, and they were like, whoa, what are the chances? Okay, let me do it again. And then they kept doing it for like an hour or more, and every time it was heads. And eventually they were kind of freaking out, and I think eventually they told a roommate or someone what was going on, and the roommate was like, it's not heads though, it's tails. And they realized that they were seeing heads because that's what they wanted to see, and their imagination was so powerful that it had kind of leaked out of the internal world onto the external world. It's a really interesting episode. I think that person did end up getting diagnosed with schizophrenia and had to be medicated, which is a really, difficult part of all of this, because we have the accepted normal ways of using our minds and consciousness in this reality, and if you do expand beyond that, you can be considered crazy by some. So it's a fine line, and maybe it was a true condition that truly needed help, or maybe it was just one method of diagnosing a certain condition that could be thought of as a condition of consciousness, an ability even. But it was disrupting that person's life, so it seemed like the right thing for them to go down that route with medication. So we as humans are primarily focused in PMR, physical matter reality, but according to countless stories, we seem to have the ability to interact with beings or consciousness units that are outside over there, so to speak. And I said outside over there because, is it here? Oh, I already put it away. I have this children's book called Outside Over There by Maurice, Sendak, and it's such a beautiful, gorgeous book. Very poetic, very dreamy. This little girl is left alone with a baby sibling and wakes up from a nap or something to see that that sibling is gone, and in its place is a changeling child made of ice, and she knows that the goblins have stolen the baby, and to get it back she has to travel to outside over there. And in order to travel, she has to put on this giant rain cloak and go backwards out the window, and then she's like flying across the sky with her trumpet because she's going to play a song to lull the goblins into like some distraction and get her baby sibling back, and she does in the end, and it's great. But I always thought that this book reminded me of like, the way fairy tales can speak of kind of liminal spaces and internal journeys. I was like, this is such an out of body type of book. It kind of seems like the kid, like the soul was stolen from the child when only a changeling was left behind, and then the sister has to almost go on like a soul retrieval journey, and she has to move backwards out a window in order to get to this other dimensional reality frame called Outside Over There. and then she's able to bring back the baby, and they're able to live again in their physical matter reality, happy and whole. I just love how art and poetry and stories can sometimes seem to be even a more direct route to the truth than practical explanations. So that's a great book if you like children's books. But just beyond PMR, in the kind of outside over there-ness of it all, there's another reality frame that Campbell calls NPMR, or non-physical matter reality. This reality includes things like spirits, ancestors, recently deceased, what some people might call ghosts or guides, maybe angels, demons, and other non-physical entities. And this could also include some beings that humans refer to as aliens. But it's hard to say what's what because things are more fluid in the non-physical. Things seem to be closer to what we experience in dreams in the sense that they blend with our perceptions and beliefs. This makes sense because dreams are a consciousness space, and in dreams, we might see things like a face that keeps changing into different faces, or we might fly, because there is no rule set in a dream world with gravity that holds us down. There's a different kind of rule set there, and every reality frame has its own rule set within consciousness, according to Tom Campbell's theory, and the theories of so many others as well. These are the same kinds of experiences that people can have in what's called a lucid projection as well, which is kind of like a visionary state or an astral travel state where you're making choices. So back to aliens and consciousness. So this is where we just go back to the topic of alien abduction. In terms of the evidence and accounts, we seem to be dealing with a few different things when it comes to aliens and UFOs. But here's my summary of the possibilities that seem most likely. So I think we're dealing with physical beings who also have the ability to project consciousness just like humans do. I think we're also dealing possibly with non-physical beings that are being interpreted as aliens. But in terms of the physical beings, we have these UFOs that seem to come from outer space to Earth. We have abduction reports that align with a lot of the sightings of these UFOs, now called UAP. And we also have more and more evidence of these craft going in and out of the ocean and in and out of mountain ranges. So there's two leading theories when it comes to the physical aliens, what we call aliens, which I would just say is a non-human maybe for the sake of this conversation. There might be those that come from other planets or other places in our universe in physical matter reality. And there also might be those that come from our planet, but we don't know about them for some reason. Either they're hiding under the ocean or in the mountains, or they have some kind of tech or some kind of ability to remain hidden from us in other ways. Maybe they branched off from our evolutionary paths and just stayed separate from us for whatever reason. These are, those ones are harder for me to wrap my head around, although kind of why not? But I do think that there's a lot of evidence in these accounts that something physical is going on, and they leave physical traces on the planet, things that are measurable with scientific devices like radar, like implants, like scars on people's bodies. People have these memories of experiences through hypnotic regression that are very visceral and tangible. But then there's this other thing. There's this dreamy thing. So sometimes people have these memories that come up in a hypnotic regression session where you might have come back from an experience with an implant or a scar or some other physical traces on your body, but you also kind of remember floating through a wall or through the ceiling, and that's hard to wrap your head around because how did that happen? Was it a dream? Was it an astral projection? Because it's very similar to things that happen in astral projection, and if so, why did anything physical happen to you? So there's this muddy, muddy gray area. So my idea about all of this is that in order for me to understand what I'm looking at when I look at these people's accounts, I need to know my way around the non-physical. So I'm really focused on developing my meditation practice and trying out all of these different out-of-body techniques that I've read about and learned about, and that so many people claim to have success with. And I'm working on gaining my own level of competency with all of that. My goal is to be able to have these non-physical out-of-body experiences consistently at will. So not randomly, like when you have an NDE, not just once in a blue moon, but regularly, kind of on demand. So that's what I'm working towards, and I'll keep you posted on that. I've had some interesting results recently. I'm definitely seeing progress, but I'm not there yet. So in season 1 of Shock's Talks, like I said before, it's all about the UFO history and phenomena which occurs all over the world. So if you're thinking, aliens, why are we even talking about aliens? They only show up in movies, books, and TV. No, they show up in people's lives. And there's a lot of data out there, and you can't strip it away from this crash retrieval stuff and these secret programs and these government cover-ups, because these craft are not just craft without something behind it that made it and operates it and seems to appear to many people all around the world. We'll get into more of that later too, in terms of how many races of aliens are there, what kind of reports are out there, what kind of stuff has been seen, what kind of stuff is happening. I'm still doing a lot of research. I'm reading Abduction by John Mack right now. I read Chosen by Yvonne Smith, and I'm just still kind of sponging up people's accounts of what they've experienced and trying to make a little mental note for myself when I feel like that sounds a lot more like an out-of-body experience or a dream, which doesn't mean it isn't related to the alien phenomena, because maybe it's a physical alien who has the ability to project consciousness interacting with humans who have the ability to project consciousness as well on some kind of astral plane or on some kind of non-physical plane. And that alien might have a physical body in this reality. It might be very far away, and they might not have physical access to our world, or it might be just outside of the atmosphere, or just inside of it, or under the ocean, or in a mountain. So I'm kind of just looking at it all and trying to think about all of those possibilities as I go through, without attaching myself too intensely to any of them. And there's another thing that we have to think about when it comes to all this, which is the LCS itself. So when you're interacting with a consciousness that is non-physical, it could be, according to Tom Campbell's theory, the larger consciousness system itself. And the larger consciousness system we can think of in a metaphorical term as like an AI, kind of. It's like this very enlightened, omnipresent, omnipotent AI. And some people call this God or source or the universe, but basically it can do anything. It can make miracles happen. It can deliver any experience directly to your consciousness, because it is consciousness and it's limitless. And you and me, we're in a more limited version of that consciousness, according to many theories. So what that means is that that consciousness system might want to interact with you for its own reasons, because it is also working with us to evolve the whole system at large, to maybe reduce entropy and move us towards a more harmonious and loving future. Maybe that's what's going on, maybe not, but that's Tom Campbell's theory. And if that is the case, then the consciousness system could appear to you in whatever form was useful for it in that moment. If it wanted to teach you a lesson or have a conversation with you or whatever, it could take on any appearance, any form. And basically, not only could it take on a form, but then you might take that data that you're receiving and you might twist it and manipulate it and interpret it, or add your own filters to it. So there's a lot of room for error. There's a lot of room for confusion. So at the end of the day, what can you get out of these encounters? And I think it really comes down to the quality of the information and what impact it has on your life. So when it comes to like a conversation with a spirit, channeling, you think it's someone that you know, you think it's someone that's dead, it could be anyone. And this book that I'm reading really gets into this in a very nuanced and interesting way. Demystifying the out-of-body experience. They talk about these different layers of helpers that are non-physical, and some of them are very evolved and positive and sort of altruistic and have everyone's best interest at heart. And other non-physical entities might be more along the lines of like a recently deceased friend or family member who is not all that evolved but still wants to influence you in some way and is going to give you a whole different kind of communication. And some of them are even less helpful and like a lot more confused and a lot darker potentially, according to a lot of people's theories. So when you are dealing with any kind of communication or your perception, even if it's your own imagination, what it really comes down to is like, what is the message and where is my free will when it comes to all this? Because you don't have to listen to anything that you hear from anyone. And if something comes to you and says, I'm an angel and I have all the answers and this is what you need to do, and you just blindly follow it, I mean, you're kind of asking for it, because anything in consciousness can mask and show up to you as any form. And the same thing goes for like, if you think you're talking to aliens. So this is why we have to have our own experiences, so that over time we start to know what we're dealing with just based on our own intuition and our own ability to analyze the data that's coming to us. And that is a slow process from what I've heard. And honestly, I do have my own experiences with this, so I'm telling you other people's knowledge, and I'm also someone who has my own direct experience with communications with non-physical entities, let's just say. So you might be talking to something and you're like, oh, this is the ghost of fill in the blank, your favorite person from history, and they're definitely talking to me and that's what's going on. And it's like, maybe that's what's going on, or maybe it's your imagination, or maybe it's someone messing with you. And by someone, I mean a non-physical someone. Maybe it's the LCS itself just trying to get a message to you, and they know that you like that person from history, and so they're using that form to communicate to you. You might be thinking, oh, I'm talking to Zoltina from the Planet Bina, but really you're just talking to the LCS, and the LCS is taking on that form, or you're projecting that form onto the LCS. You could also be talking to your own imagination. You could be talking to another human consciousness that's projecting and cloaking as Zoltina from Bina, or you could be talking to an actual Zoltina from Planet Bina, and she's projecting her consciousness from far beyond our physical system, from some other reality frame, or from some physical place in our physical reality frame. So there's a lot of possibilities. Again, since you can't really know what you're dealing with, that's when you just have to decide, is this communication worth anything to me? Am I getting lost in it? Am I making assumptions? Is it harming me? Is it helping me? And you kind of have to just like engage in a way that makes sense for you. So when we're projecting consciousness, as you can tell, there's a lot that's possible. There's a lot of imagination involved. There's subconscious tendencies involved, beliefs and fear all get in the way and get in the mix too. So this is why meditation is the greatest foundational practice for the beginning of consciousness exploration. It's like meditation is the time when you sit quietly and observe your mind, or you calm your body, or you feel into your energy. Obviously, there are so many techniques and so many ways to do this, but the coolest thing about meditation is just the minute you start turning your own awareness on your own thought process, you're going to gain so much understanding about the nature of your particular consciousness, and that's your individuated unit of consciousness, and that's going to help you so much when it comes to interacting with other consciousnesses. And you can also gain skills like noticing fear, noticing prejudice, noticing an assumption, noticing a bias. Like, you can notice that and then you can calm it, or you can put it aside, or you can, you know, work around it. You can start to evolve yourself in this way. So I think it's really cool. I think that's like the best part of meditation, and that's super applicable to our physical matter reality life, whether or not we ever have anomalous experiences, because then we can start bringing that power into our interactions with other humans who are also consciousness, who just happen to be living in a limited reality in bodies like we all are. So another thing about the alien abduction stuff, I kind of said it before, but I just wanted to reiterate that a lot of the experiences in these alien abduction accounts are very wishy-washy, and they do read like they could be out-of-body experiences. So you have to ask yourself the question, did these people let their imagination get too involved? Did they really have some kind of experience? Is it a combination of something physical and something non-physical? And what are the implications? Like, what does that mean? You know, if there's some kind of bleed over or kind of crossover between physical humans who have consciousness abilities and other entities that might also be physical but are also using projective techniques and telepathy to interact with us, what are we going to do about that? You know, we're going to have to level up, I think, because we're so out of our league when it comes to dealing with these beings who have already tapped into their own ability to project beyond their physical limitations. And if that's happening, we just have to got to catch up. So that's what I think, at least. And I think it's really worth studying the out-of-body teachers and trying to have our own experiences. The more of us that do, the more we can have these conversations where it's like, okay, this thing happened in this practice that I did, or in this vision that I did, and I had this out-of-body experience where I met this or that, or like, let's do an experiment together. Like, I'm traveling to this realm, meet me there, let's get some evidence and bring it back, like in terms of verifying what we both saw in that place. You know, people do these experiments and it's so fascinating. So currently I'm still working my way through this book, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience by Luis Minero. I'm more than halfway done now. I'm loving it so much. It's so interesting. And what I love most is that in this book, Minero outlines for us these terms that are so perfectly descriptive and complete for these very nuanced aspects of the out-of-body reality. And I wanted to share one with you today, and then I'm going to do a whole episode next time on what I'm learning from this book. It kind of starts with an outline to kind of ground us in what we're dealing with, and then it goes into like techniques that you can try and practices that you can do. And a lot of this stuff, again, is similar to what you learn in ancient yogic teachings and what you learn in Tom Campbell's work and so many others. But every time someone redefines it in their own words, it's kind of like you dial in on the clarity and you can look at it from all these different angles and really start to come up with your own interpretation. So for example, in yoga, you have the study of chakras, and you have these energy systems that have been visualized by many people who go into meditation and come out with this information. And then that was passed down over time, and different people have their own versions of these things, like energy body, mental body, emotional body. These are all things that, my dog's hair is getting on me, that I learned in yoga, but in this book, they have their own terms for those things, but they're directly related, and you can tell. And you start to realize that it's probably never going to be so cut and dry that we just have one system that describes it all perfectly. So it's good for us to explore all the systems that are out there so that we can see where there's crossover. And the areas where there isn't, maybe that's an area where it's a little less solid, or people were a little confused, or they were bringing their own stuff into the mix when they were interpreting the data. So it's important for us to look at all of them, and hopefully we can each come up with our own once we have our own experiences. So this one term I wanted to share was a Thosene. And Thosene, my interpretation of that word is kind of like it's this little energetic thought bubble thing that it's what passes between people that's nonverbal. And it's kind of like an information packet. And the way that Minero describes it is like, it's just a word that they made up, but the word is specifically pointing to these various components of what those little packets of energy have in them. And these are the things that pass between people when they're in the non-physical. So I'll read you the definition. A Thosene is the unit of manifestation of the consciousness. Consciousnesses are producing energetic information, or Thosenes, all the time. This is a non-stop continuous process. In popular circles, lay people or psychics may say that they are reading the aura of another person. Technically speaking, we can describe this process as the psychic being able to feel the Thosenes of another person to decode them. It is observed from this and from the previous examples that this information is very specific. The capacity of the person to feel energy will determine the level of detail and specificity perceived. So he goes on to talk about how when you have an affinity for someone, that flow back and forth is even greater. It's like unobstructed. So if it's a mother and a daughter, if it's a couple who's spending a lot of time together, maybe it's even someone that you're just super focused on, your Thosenes are passing a lot quicker. So if a mother thinks about the daughter and very specifically is thinking, I'm worried about you right now because of this and that, the daughter might either get that first initial little ping of like, oh, I just thought about my mom out of the blue. I don't know why, but I just thought about her. Okay. You don't think anything of it, but maybe that was directly that Thosene coming to you. If you're more perceptive, you might get, oh, I'm just thinking about my mother. It seems like I feel like she's worried about me. Where did that come from? That's another level of it. And people that are really advanced are going to pick up on all the nuance within that little energy packet. So they break it down like this. The Tho part of it is the thought part. The S in the word that they created is like the sentiment. It represents the emotion. And the Ene, the E-N-E part, is representing energy. So within each of these little packets that are traveling between people, you have like a thought component, a feeling component, and an energy component. And these relate to your different subtle bodies. So when you see the word written out, in order for us to like interpret what's going on and understand what's going on, it might be like, my mom's Thosene just came to me and it's a Thosene. The Th part is super pronounced because she's thinking really hard about all the things that could go wrong, and that's why she's worried with me. The S part is also in bold because she's super emotional about it, but the energy part is low because her energy is not engaged, or something like that. Or there's this example of like walking into a room where people were having an argument. The Thosenes in that place were so strong, passing back and forth between those people who were arguing, that like you open the door and walk into that room and nobody's talking and you don't even know what's going on, but you could cut through that energy with a knife. You feel the tension in the air. You're just like, ugh, like what is going on in here? You're picking up on those Thosenes, even though you had nothing to do with it. And there's more. These are all metaphors. Again, like these terms could be anything, but they're really useful, I think, for conceptualizing this really intangible stuff. There's a Holothosene, which is like the collection of Thosenes or energetic information associated with something specific. So that could be like a cultural Holothosene. All these, like, women might share a Holothosene. People of a certain race might share a Holothosene. A topic like football could have a Holothosene, and when you think about it and tap into it, you're part of that. You're picking up on that. Places can have a Holothosene. So, like, I was thinking about a temple where all these dedicated minds go in and meditate for so many hours every day, and all these beautiful rituals happen over time, and it becomes so charged, so energized, that when anyone walks into that place, whether they're part of that tradition or not, they feel this beautiful energy. They feel instantly different than before they were in that space. And the same could be true for like a hospital. Not the best Holothosene in my opinion, or like a jail would have its own Holothosene. So it's really interesting to contemplate, because then you could start to think about, how can I affect these things in reality, and like, do we want it to feel gross and chaotic and tense and yucky and stressful and nasty, or like what feels good, and how can we work towards that, you know? So my home is a place where I create my own Holothosene by treating my space with love. I kind of anthropomorphize all of my things in my home, because I like to talk to it and feel like it's this living consciousness, and I like to treat it with love and clean it and burn incense and keep the energy light, and, you know, have nice content playing in my space, and only certain things in my room and certain things in the living room, that kind of stuff. That's how I'm cultivating my Holothosene of my home. And you can do it too. And you probably feel these things already. It's like once you start having words for it, you're like, oh my God, that's really real. I really get that. That's totally a thing. And apparently in the non-physical realities, you can really pick up on these things, because there's less verbal communication and more telepathic communication, which is why, again, the alien stuff is so interesting, because so many accounts of alien contact involve telepathy. And telepathy can happen in so many different ways. It's not just like you're hearing words necessarily. You might be hearing a voice with words, or you might be seeing a whole movie, or you might be immersed in a whole experience, first person. You might be smelling something. You might be sensing a temperature. You might be feeling pressure or feeling expansive. This is the limitless capacity of our consciousness communication. So I think it's exciting to imagine a future where Earth humans have gone beyond the limitations of our physical matter reality rule set by expanding and activating our consciousness abilities, and we're all a little bit more or completely telepathic and able to perceive subtle energies and Thosenes and Holothosenes, and it just feels exciting to me. It also comes with a lot of challenges, because as you ramp up to those abilities, you're going to face all kinds of internal struggles and fears and neurotic spinning out moments in your mind about the implications of it all. But I do think it's where we're all headed, to be honest. So that's a little bit from Luis Minero's book. Like I said, I'm working with a lot of these techniques right now. I'm doing journal entries of all my experiences, so that maybe one day I can analyze it or share more about it. But for now, I'm just kind of keeping it to myself. Because it's like talking about dreams. You know, some of your friends care about what you dreamed about, but a lot of people don't really care. And it's kind of like your own dream is always going to mean more to you than it probably means to anyone else. So I think these things are kind of like, they're for us, and we all just have to try it out and determine for ourselves whether it's real or a bunch of BS, and share with each other what we learn. So if you've ever had an out-of-body experience, or a near-death experience, or if you astral travel, or if you lucid dream, or if you meditate, let me know about it in the comments, please. I do want to know. And if you want to try out this stuff with me, This is the book again. Whoop, there we go. It's a great book. And recommend to me any other books that you know of about this topic that I haven't yet talked about on this channel. And that'll be it for today. I will see you next time on Shocks Talks.